Coming up on today's show.
A great example that we see in the workplace all the time is somebody who's maybe on a conference call, maybe even watching a webinar, and they're doing something else at the same time.
We believe, even like watching TV now, they almost encourage you to be, watch TV, but have your other screen going on your phone and comment. And
what's happening in our brain is that we're listening to the content, or we're listening to that conference call. Maybe we're even listening to see if our name is called or if it's our turn to speak. We're trying to get something out of that, but then we need to switch our attention or switch our focus to the email that we're sending.
The myth of multitasking today on Keeping You Organized. Well, hello, welcome to Keeping You Organized. Now today we're going to try to do this podcast and not anything else while we're doing the podcast, because that would be multitasking. And we've done a lot of different articles, shows on multitasking, and there's kind of a wide range of opinions on it out there, as far as some people say you can't do it, some people say you can do it, but here's the rules that you have to follow. But we're going to bring on Debbie Rosemont. It's Simply Placed. And Debbie, welcome to Keeping You Organized.
Thanks, John. I'm thrilled to be back.
So we're going to talk about multitasking and the myth. So I'm assuming here that you're thinking that multitasking may not be a good thing for us to do.
Well, let's define what we mean by multitasking.
Okay.
I think multitasking is a myth, and in this way, can we walk and chew gum at the same time? Sure, we can. And technically, is that doing two things at once? It is. But for the sake of this conversation, am really talking about two things that we need to think about or concentrate or focus on. So two cognitive tasks. And, a great example that we see in the workplace all the time is somebody who's maybe on a conference call, maybe even watching a webinar, and they're doing something else at the same time. So, maybe they're sending an email or trying to get through their email inbox. That's multitasking.
Yeah, I agree. That's a great illustration too, because I think we believe, even like watching TV now, they almost encourage you to be, watch TV, but have your other screen going on your phone and comment. And I don't know if our mind can handle it or not.
Well, it can't. I think what's really happening, and we'll get into this a little bit more, is that we're asking our mind to switch back and forth from one train of thought or one device even, or medium to the other. So in the example of the, watching the webinar or taking part of a conference call and sending an email at the same time, what's happening in our brain is that we're listening to the content, or we're listening to that conference call. Maybe we're even listening to see if our name is called or if it's our turn to speak. We're trying to get something out of that, but then we need to switch our attention or switch our focus to the email that we're sending.
Mm-hmm.
So we're asking our brain to switch back and forth, and in some cases rapidly, and to do both at the same time. That's a great example of multitasking that we see often.
Okay, I think it's a great definition. So kind of where do we want to start now on this conversation?
I think let's talk about why multitasking feels like the thing we need to do to get it all done.
Okay.
We all have a lot of demands on our time, and I think in some cases we feel compelled to multitask. In some cases, we might work for an employer who still has that on a job description. The ability to multitask is a desired quality, or they're telling somebody that they need to be able to multitask to be successful in a job. So there's this perpetuated myth that it's a good thing or a positive quality. But I also think that the technology advances, and as convenient as technology is, I think it has hurt our ability to focus on one thing at a time. We are receiving so much input, and there is so much potential distraction that, again, we feel like, you gave the great example of, I'm watching TV shows and maybe I'm scrolling through Instagram at the same time, because if I don't, then what am I missing out on, right? So we've got this FOMO, this fear of missing out. So lots of reasons why we feel compelled to multitask, and some of the apps and technology are built to keep us hooked, to keep us wanting to engage as often as we do, and that hurts our ability to be productive.
Okay, great. I think it's good to clarify and put some why behind this. What else do we want to talk before we talk about how we actually deal with it?
Well, I think let's talk a little bit more about why it doesn't work. And maybe what the negative effects are when we do it, because I'd like to try to help people understand why we want to try and stop. So when we're multitasking, as I mentioned before, we're actually I think it was an author, Dave Crenshaw, coined the term switch tasking. We're asking our brain to switch back and forth from one train of thought to another. And a great example of that, viewers or listeners could do right now is if I asked you to say the letters A through J, you'd do that really fast. I mean, we know our ABCs. If I asked you to count from 1 to 10, same thing, you'd do that really fast. But if I asked you to alternate letters and numbers and to do A, 1, B, 2, C, 3, D, 4, it's getting harder now, right? And it's going to take me well more than twice as long to get through A through J and 1 through 10 by alternating, because I have to switch. And so this is just for demonstration purposes, from what I know about the letters to what I know about the numbers. So that's what's happening in our brain. And the results are that when we're trying to do two things at one time, when we're multitasking, it actually takes us longer to get them both done than it would be if we were to focus on one and then the other.
Right. And part of that secondary task could almost be considered an interruption to the first. So it logically is going to take longer.
Yeah. Yep, it'll take longer. We will be more likely to make mistakes. So our chance of errors goes way up. The one thing that piqued my interest in this topic was an article. It was published in the Wall Street Journal by Sue Schellenberger, and I think it was in 2003. And the title of the article was "Multitasking Makes You Stupid." So I've used that to name a workshop on the same topic. And the reason that she titled her article as such is because that in the research that she did, she found that not only are we more likely to make mistakes, and it's going to take at least twice as long to get these things done, our ability to learn new things and to remember things goes down when we're multitasking. So in that example of you're on this webinar or you're on this conference call and you're sending an email at the same time, if you are being asked to be on that conference call because you're expected either to contribute something or to learn something from it, you're decreasing your ability to do that. So we are less likely to remember what we're hearing. We're less likely to learn new things when we're multitasking.
Now I'm thinking about all the people who are watching the podcast, and I'm saying, stop right now. I want you to count from 1 to 10 and A to Z alternately, right? We need you to do that because you've got to pay attention. But so we're going to take a quick break here, and when we come back, let's talk about some of the ways we deal with this and how we kind of fight that, if it's the temptation of multitasking or actually doing it. So we're with Debbie Rosemont from Simply Placed, and we will be right back. New solutions for your desktop from myorganize.life. Fall is a time for a change in colors, and now you can brighten up your desktop with organizing products from myorganize.life. Colorful, fresh, invigorating. Give your desktop a new look with new desktop solutions from myorganize.life. That's myorganize.life. myorganize.life. We're back now on Keeping You Organized, talking about the myth of multitasking and how it can really take us longer to get stuff done. We talked with Debbie Rosemont right before the break about just how when you're doing two things, naturally it's going to take a longer time to do it. And Debbie, so we need some help. That's why we come to you. How do we deal with either the temptation or actually multitasking, and what should we be doing instead?
Well, there's a few things, and it's so worth it. The one negative effect I didn't mention is that when we're multitasking, our stress level goes up. So what we're asking our brain to do cortisol, the hormone cortisol in our system. And so when we do this over long periods of time, that impacts our health. It impacts, I already talked about the memory, the ability to learn new things. So here's what we do instead. One is we need to learn and sometimes relearn how to focus on one thing at a time. So if turning off notifications helps do that, and I would say it would. Yeah. I like to get people to think about being physically organized so that they don't have distraction on their desk to multitask, so that you can have the one thing in front of you to focus on. And setting a timer can be a strategy to help you focus as well, as can self-care. So when we do a better job of hydrating and eating good brain food and getting the proper amount of sleep and decreasing our stress, all these things put us in a better position to focus on the most important task that's at hand in front of us. Right. So there are some things that we can do to increase our ability to focus.
Great. And I think about, I know you're a professional speaker as well. And just like speakers, they have to every so often kind of do something to kind of get the audience to refocus and pay attention, right? Otherwise, you got the guy in the front row kind of dozing off. Yeah. So I think that idea of refocusing is great, or to be focused.
Often one of the strategies that they'll use, which is effective as well, is movement. So getting people to do something. And so if you are finding that you're tempted to multitask, or your focus is straying during the day, getting up and getting out for a short walk, or getting up and even just doing some jumping jacks or running in place, that can help you focus as well. So awesome. Movement is another great strategy.
Sounds good. All right, let's move on to the next tip or strategy for dealing with this.
Okay, so number 2 is to think about optimizing your schedule. So figuring out what time of the day you are at your best, where your attention is at its best. You feel most alert, awake, energetic, and doing the hardest things that take the most focus during that time. So some people are morning people, and they are most alert and with it in the morning, perhaps after a cup of coffee, after a good night's rest. And so that is the best time for them to do their hardest, most important work that needs the deepest level of focus. So that's one, is think about, are you a morning person, or do you need to just check off some lower hanging fruit off your list first, and maybe, late morning or midday is better for you. And then other people still are more night owls, and they're able to focus and get their most important work done in the evening. Right. So think about optimizing your schedule, and that includes taking intentional breaks as well. So it's hard for anybody to maintain focus all throughout the day. So we just talked about some different ways you could take breaks, move, get some water, have an intentional distraction, something that you choose to do to take your mind off of the high focus work, take a break, and then you're going to be able to come back to it.
It's interesting in our factory here, because we make stuff. They have the breaks are kind of predetermined. So they ring the bell, everyone stops working. Some people go for a little walk, some people just, relax or whatever. And then they ring the bell when it's time to go back into your job. And they even do a 2-minute warning. So they've built in the margin so that, if you hear the bell, you shouldn't be like working that second. Okay, I've got 2 minutes now to get back to my station or whatever. Right. So that works out well. Great. Well, go ahead.
I don't know the science behind it, but I think in any manufacturing or any factory environment, any production facility, these breaks, I'm sure, have been proven to increase safety and increase production. I'm sure of it.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's great. Okay, so what's another strategy?
So the third one is to minimize distraction. Okay. So we need to do what we can to lower that temptation to multitask. So I mentioned before, turning off notifications, they're distracting. They hurt more than they help. So whether that's an email notification, whether that's a phone notification, but turning those things off and living without them. I've had people report just great reduction in stress alone by not having all the buzzes and the bings and the dings. And so anyway,
when we've done the show before, we've had some people who forgot to turn their phone off, and then they get a distraction, and it happens right when we're recording. But
yeah,
you can't help those things.
Yeah. And I also think about, minimizing distraction. If you work, and many people do, they work in an open work environment where other people may, be a distraction. So a couple of ideas there. One might be pulling off of your desk and working in a small conference room or a meeting space during a task that takes a higher level of focus, so that you're not tempted to multitask or be distracted. Another is to let other people around you know, and maybe it's having a certain time of the day that you're really focused, so that they know, hey, between 10 and 12 you're getting your best work done. Don't interrupt, or don't distract if that's at all possible. And then removing some things from your workspace that could be distracting. So maybe you have a candy dish on your desk, and other people come up and they chit chat when they grab a piece of candy. It might be helpful to remove that or put it into a shared kitchen or something, so that is less of a distraction too.
That's a great tip right there. Is that move that darn candy dish, because that's like honey and a bee, right? So okay, what's number 4?
Number 4 is to manage interruptions. So we are not going to be able to totally eliminate all interruptions during our day. So then we need to think about, rather than trying to multitask through them, how do we manage them? So if I'm in a work environment where somebody else comes up to me, asks a question, or interrupts me, I want to actually pause what I'm doing. I want to make a note about what I was about to do next. That's going to decrease the time that it takes me to re-engage with that work when I do. So just making that note about what I was about to do next. And then I want to ask the person who's interrupting me what they need, and trying to get at that quickly, so that I can make a decision. And it's really a binary decision. Either what that person needs is a higher priority than what I was working on, in which case I've made that note about what I was about to do next. I can put it aside and give that person my full attention. Or what I'm working on is a higher priority than what that person needs, in which case I'd want to defer the interruption, or I'd want to say, John, I'd love to help you with that, and I have a deadline to get this to my boss at 11, so come back at 2, I can help you then.
Right. I've used this story on the podcast before about a previous job I had, where a guy who worked for me, he came in like every day about the same time. He just wanted to check in. Hey, I'm just checking with you, just how things going. And, it was maybe a 3 or 4 minute conversation. I realized it didn't matter what I was doing. The door was open. He stopped in, and it was an interruption. Finally, I said, I just have to schedule a daily meeting with this person, because that's gonna get him satisfied, and it'll keep me from being interrupted too. So
that is a great strategy. Even somebody who has a door to close may still get interrupted. Sometimes putting a note on the outside of the door about when the door is going to be open again can eliminate those interruptions, because someone says, oh, the door is going to be open again at 2. I can wait till 2.
Yes.
So that's another tip.
Awesome. Okay, we're now to number 5, right?
Yep. So number 5, the strategy is to say no. So to say no to multitasking, sometimes to say no to other people. And I think there's a variety of ways we can do that, but we need to remember that every time we say yes to something, we are saying no to something else. So if you're feeling the temptation to multitask, and you've tried to focus on one thing, you may have too much on your plate, right? So sometimes we need to say no to some things, or the yes and. I gave an example of that. Yes, I'd love to help you with that, John, and I can do that tomorrow. Right? Rather than trying to squeeze so much into one day, so that we're less tempted to multitask.
Right.
So thinking about no as a complete sentence, sometimes we don't need to justify it. If it's our boss we're saying no to, we might need to justify it. Or to say something, again, the yes and, yes, I'd be happy to add that to my work.
Right.
And which of these things that I was going to do today should wait.
Yeah, no, not now, but I will, meet with you, or whatever it takes, so you can stay on task. Well, these are great strategies, Debbie, and I know you do a lot of corporate training. You've got a residential division. Talk a little bit about your business and the kinds of things you do and how people can get a hold of you.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We do help people get and stay organized in their home. We go into companies and we help their employees be more organized and productive with the way they work. We teach about time management and productivity. So a lot of the things we're talking about today. And then we also have a great virtual productivity program. So this is a good fit for entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, or anybody in companies that don't necessarily have the budget to have us come fly in and do instructor-led training. We do monthly webinars on topics just like these, and have a great community of people who are like-minded and wanting to be more organized and productive, smarter about the way they work, not necessarily working harder. And so they engage in a monthly virtual program, and we love to be of service that way too.
Great. And well, how do they find it? Where do they go?
So they can come to our website. It's www.itssimplyplaced.com, ITSSIMPLYPLACED.com. And the virtual program, if you hover over business organization, you'll see the It's About Time program there. You can also go to the Contact Us page, ask a question, let us know what you think about this podcast and these ideas. We'd love to hear from you.
Great. And we'll have that information also in our show notes. And
Awesome.
So Debbie, this is great. I feel really good. We did this whole podcast and I wasn't distracted. I didn't have anything else I had to do. So I'm feeling victorious today.
Fantastic. It's going to carry on through the rest of your day. I know it.
Awesome. Okay, well, folks, there you have it. We will be back to do another focused podcast next time on Keeping You Organized.